very warm welcome to the webinar on communication, coordination, and collaboration, strengthening the fight against counterfeiting and smuggling. We are extremely delighted to have with us Dr. Ahmed Patnai, Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. I welcome you, and it is my proud privilege to have you with us today. I also welcome Dr. Dipankar Arun, Commissioner GST, Appeal, Dehradun, Uttarakhand. I think Dr. Arun is having a little problem with the connection, so he'll be joining us soon. Thank you, Dr. Arun, for joining us and taking time out from your busy schedule. It has been long known that smuggling and counterfeiting make up a vast global business representing millions and billions of dollars. Industry, illegal industry creates significant drain on the world economy. It negatively impacts legitimate economic activity and facilitates an underground economy and unorganized crime that deprives governments of revenue for vital public services, forces higher burden on taxpayers, dislocates hundreds of thousands of legitimate jobs, and exposes consumers to dangerous and ineffective products. It is the world's largest growing economy, and there are several sizes for this. Some say that the size is 650 billion, and some says it is as much as $3 trillion economy. No country is immune to its impact. No single sector can be said to be an exception. To add to it, the coronavirus pandemic has presented fresh challenges to this existing problem, causing severe disruptive impact on both demand and supply side elements. Unfortunately, the counterfeiters and smugglers have used the pandemic as a great opportunity. And because the supply chain is disruptive across the globe, this has made their entire activity much more lucrative, both online and offline. It has been seen that since lockdown, Indian Customs Directorate of Revenue, Intelligence, Police and paramilitary forces have conducted raids and effected several seizures of smuggled, spurious and counterfeit sanitizers, masks, PP kits, sanitary products, electronic goods, cigarettes, alcohol, gold, and other items across India. The Government of India has initiated steps to address this problem. Despite actions, smuggling and counterfeiting rates remain high. In many instances, low priority to such crimes and lack of deterrent punishments have been consistently cited as the key element missing in enforcement of such crimes. Moreover, the present scenario, which demands social distancing and consumers relying more on e-commerce for their purchases, there is an increased scrutiny on e-commerce entities vis-à-vis availability of spurious, unsafe, and non-compliant products. It is of immense importance that e-commerce firms collaborate with government, other stakeholders, and work together to provide adequate protection against such malpractices. As you are aware, FICCI Cascade has been working very closely over the years with government, industry, legal experts, consumer organizations, youth to create awareness on this issue and work collaboratively to find solutions to address this socio-economic scourge. Today's webinar has been organized with an objective to further the 3 C's: communication, coordination, and collaboration, which are the key elements to fight the threat. We are joined by the stakeholders from government, industry, e-commerce platform, and consumer organizations today. Vijoin actually works quite extensively in this area, and we have also partnered with him on doing this work on several occasions. I'm sure that they will share their insights on this subject and deliberate on the need for a robust data sharing mechanism between industry player and government agencies like the customs, which can act as a valuable tool in the fight against such ill practices. I would like to express my appreciation to each one of you for having accepted our invitation. We are indeed very fortunate to be able to bring together such a distinguished body of experts and participants to discuss this very important subject. And my special heartfelt thanks to Dr. Ahmed Patnai for sparing his valuable time and sharing his insights going forward. I look forward to this interesting deliberations ahead. Thank you very much and my best wishes to this webinar and the discussions going forward. Over to you, Swati.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed privileged to have with us Dr. Ahmed Patnaik, Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. Dr. Patnaik is currently a member of the Parliament representing Odisha in the Rajya Sabha. He was an Indian Audit and Accounts Service Officer and former Principal Accountant General of Sikkim, Odisha in Kerala. He has graduated from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and completed a master's degree in finance and systems from Xavier's Institute of Management, Bhubaneswar, and a bachelor's degree in law from Utkal University, Bhubaneswar. He further pursued a master's degree in public management from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Singapore, and the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. He was offered the British Chevening Gurukul Scholarship for Excellence at the London School of Economics by the Foreign and the Commonwealth Office of the British Government in 2013. In 2015, he completed an Advanced Management Development Program from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. His current research interests include institutional perspective in development interventions and public policy, audit, and accounts, along with sustainability issues. Sir, it is indeed a great opportunity for us to hear from you your thoughts on this. May I request you to kindly make the keynote address, please?
Thank you so much, Shwati. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers, from FICCI Cascade. I'm also grateful to all the other members who are present here for this webinar. When this topic came up before me, I was reminded of my days in Trivandrum. I must share this with you. The travel flight time between Trivandrum and Delhi is a good 4.5 hours. It actually can take you to Singapore from Calcutta. But during this particular period of time, suddenly one day I found a person sitting next to me in the middle seat. And he was asking the corner seat fellow, I was on the aisle seat, corner seat fellow about his details. And then he was checking something with the manifest, passenger manifest. And I was very curious to know what was he doing. And then I understood when I had a separate discussion with him that he was from the customs department. What he was trying to do was trying to find out from there, confirm the intelligence that they had, that the passenger sitting next to him, that's the window seat, was actually carrying gold, because this flight had come from Malay and then it was coming to Trivandrum, or I think it was coming probably from the Gulf somewhere and to Trivandrum and then to Delhi. Now, this is the level of enforcement intelligence that's required to get over or to face this challenge of smuggling. My narration of this particular incident is only to emphasize the point that counterfeiting and smuggling, as has been said by Mr. Rajput, just before I start, just before this, my speech, is the fact that this is a global phenomenon. It's a rising phenomenon. Its size is not known. Some say it's 2 trillion by the end of 2020. And some say that it's really growing very fast. And very rightly, as he said, the pandemic threw up these channels even much more strongly, in which they could gather together to increase their products, to evade the enforcement mechanisms, and probably grow in size. But when the topic of communication, coordination, and collaboration comes in this fight against counterfeiting and smuggling, the first thing that comes to me is the resolve. These 3 C's of communication, coordination, and collaboration, I would like to preface now with courage, conviction, and commitment. We need to have the courage, we need to have conviction, and then we need to have commitment. How do you achieve this? You achieve this through communication, coordination, and collaboration. This is my way of looking at this topic. Now, when I talk about courage, conviction, and commitment, I'm actually referring to, most importantly, who are the people who are at the last mile of, let us say, whether they're suffering or whether they're gaining. We would say that it is the citizens of this country from the counterfeiting and smuggling rackets that go on. It is the citizens of this country. So the most important thing is we have to make sure that the citizens do not fall for it. What is now happening, in fact, the legislations, I know I have a long list of legislations, as you would all know: the Trademark Act, the Copyright Act, the Customs Act, the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, the Prevention of Food Adulteration, Food and Safety Standards, the IPC, of course, and Consumer Protection Act. In fact, I did speak in the Parliament when the new Consumer Protection Act was being brought in, and it was very gratifying that one of the most important things to give teeth to the consumer protection movement in the country was the new Consumer Protection Act, in which they bring in the penalties of, the penalties are much stronger, the punitive are much stronger, and there is a central consumer protection authority, which is a multi-member organization which can do the enforcement per se, which was lacking in the act before. But despite having these legislations, the point is the consumer is the one who has to be made aware. He has to be made aware that he is not falling for counterfeit goods and services. He is not buying into that. And more importantly, he understands the ramifications or the negative externalities that happens if he is buying into these counterfeit goods and services or smuggled goods. Now, I have a feeling my long years in the civil service bureaucracy and I also as a consumer, I have seen that many of our consumers are not fully aware of the implications of these counterfeit, spurious kind of products. There is some semblance of understanding and awareness when it comes to medicines, but not in many others. And mind you, before we brought on those kind of import restrictions on the Chinese good, India was anyway flooded with a number of things. Not all of them counterfeit maybe, but substantial amount was counterfeit as well. So the most important thing is consumer awareness and their education, their proactive education. The second aspect is, there is an economic rationale behind counterfeiting and smuggling. This economic rationale, whether it is price differential, preferential pricing, that has to be addressed. Now, that has to be addressed through a combination of measures, public policy measures, as well as strong enforcement measures. Now, as Mr. Rajput said, traditionally, or it's a legacy issue, in India, white-collar crimes are generally treated as less serious than those serious crimes which are covered under the IPC. And that is the problem. I'm very happy that GST is the first legislation in which the strictest punishment of arrest actually happens in case of default. Many people might question the severity of it, But I am just saying that this is a big loophole in our criminal jurisprudence in this country. So that has to be remedied. I'm happy that it is getting remedied. The third aspect is I was strenuously going through all the legislations, the provisions that are available to find these two words, counterfeit and smuggling. I didn't find it anywhere in neither the Consumer Protection Act, or the IPC, not the PFA, not the Food Security Standards, not in the drugs and cosmetics in the customs. Maybe in the customs, but not in the rest. So I think the recognition of this issue, as a problem area for public safety, for the economy at large, for having a kind of spread its wing in the web economy, all these have to be recognized by policymakers and governments at large, and in fact legislators. And that is what I think is something which the advocacy efforts have to be taken to a level in which this kind of acknowledgement comes. The other aspect which I thought would be important for me to highlight is the fact that, just as again we discussed, that technology, the availability of internet, and the pace at which things move, data moves, cross-border data flows, while we are addressing these issues in the committee that I was talking about, or the Personal Data Protection Bill, which will eventually see the light of the day when it is placed in the Parliament, the important thing is that this particular aspect, that technology, the way technology and internet is being used by racketeers, by people who are smuggling goods or counterfeiting currencies and other things, they will have to be, their data has to be available to investigating agencies, because the audit trail in those kind of transactions is generally very weak because of the several levels of encryptions that is allowed, or that technology allows. So we need to have a technically superior investigating enforcement kind of an agency which supports these enforcement agencies, and they are able to track them, they are able to track these data flows, and then catch hold of those who are responsible for such transactions. So I was coming out with this idea that just as we have in case of criminal acts of child pornography or any kind of stuff, let us think about a situation where we have a web portal, we have a very advanced web portal, and crowdsource literally any instance of counterfeit that any citizen finds out or any person wants to report, and once it is reported, immediately act on. We have the CERT in IT, and the equivalent of it in the consumer side could be something that I think would be useful. The last thing that I would like to talk about is this aspect of coordination and collaboration. We have to actively collaborate with international agencies. I'm not saying that we are not doing it, but I think there has to be we have to catch up or be ahead of these people who are involved in counterfeiting and smuggling as far as technology is concerned. I think we have to be ahead of them in order to apprehend them. And that is where international collaborations help. The international agreements that is there between various countries, bilateral as well as multilateral, have to be relooked. In fact, I was appalled when I saw this news a few days ago that 70,000 crores of taxes that we lose, in our country because of various tax havens. This could also be contributing there. So I think that the regime of enforcement, the regime of laws, the regime of legislations that we have may be sufficient, but most important thing is the certainty of punishment. Certainty of punishment is a bigger deterrent than the quantum of punishment. And here again, the quantum of punishment is different in different acts. So this harmonization has to be brought in, and citizens have to be roped in as enforcers of counterfeiting measures and also anti-smuggling. The economic rationale behind perpetuating this kind of activities has to be studied so that the citizens do not fall prey into the economic rationale and get incentivized to buy counterfeit products and smuggled goods. let me tell you, no amount of regulatory measures can succeed unless the citizens participate. But no, it is not necessary that it is only in the social sector. It is equally important in the enforcement sector. So I would probably end by saying that this is a great initiative, really, by FICCI Cascade, because these are issues which are very important in an economy which we are aspiring to grow. We are aspiring to grow at a very fast pace. The size of the economy is increasing. I think we'll be able to, if it's 2025, maybe 27, 5 trillion, and then we have been discussing about making it 10 trillion. But the parallel economy due to counterfeiting and smuggling has to be addressed. Unless we do that, the entire ecosystem of transactions, business transactions, will actually be vitiated. The issue of counterfeiting and smuggling is not a business issue. It's an issue of the country. It is an issue for public economics in this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your thought-provoking and stimulating address. We will take down your inputs and put it in our recommendations when we present it to the government on the ways to counter this menace. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined today by Mr. Dipankar Aaron, Commissioner GST Appeals, Dehradun, Uttarakhand. Mr. Dipankar Aaron is a BTech in Electrical Engineering and MTech in Energy Studies from IIT Delhi. He has also done Advanced Management Program from Cambridge University, UK, and Leadership Development Program from Australia. Over the last 24 years in civil service, he has worked on different assignments ranging from customs at the Indo-Nepal border to implementing new industrial policy in Uttarakhand to policy making in the Ministry of Finance. He has 14 years of experience in enforcement-related work. He also had a diplomatic stint as consul in the Indian mission to Hong Kong from 2012 to 2015. Mr. Aaron is a decorated officer who was conferred the Presidential Award of Specially Distinguished Record of Service in 2016. He is an avid writer and a photographer as well. His articles on travel, nature, and heritage have appeared in various magazines and newspapers. His recent book, published in July this year, titled On the Trail of Buddha, A Journey to the East, explores spiritual, philosophical, and cultural linkages that bind the Indian civilization to the East Asian civilizations of China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and Mongolia. He was the Additional Director General heading the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, DRI, for the Eastern region prior to his current assignment as the Commissioner GST Appeals in Uttarakhand. Thank you for joining us today, sir, and may I request you to please make the special address.
Thank you very much, Swati, for a very generous introduction. And thank you very much, FICCI, for FICCI Cascade, Mr. Anil Rajput, and a very dedicated team of officials from FICCI who have organized this event. Namaskar to everybody, to Dr. Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Ahmed Patnai ji, to other distinguished panelists, Mr. Noor Patel, Mr. Milind Palani, and Professor Bijun Kumar Mishra, and all the attendees. It is a matter of privilege for be on this very prestigious forum, a forum that draws all the stakeholders from private sector, from government, from our legislators as represented by Dr. Ahmed Patnai. A very important need for such a platform today, as Dr. Patnaik eloquently mentioned in his address, for all stakeholders to come together and to join hands and to come up with the courage, conviction, and commitment, right, to fight this common menace which threatens the country. Now, before I begin my address, I would like to mention, in fact, Swati, you mentioned about this book, A Journey to the East, Exploring Indian Heritage in East Asia. Now, it has a very strong connection with the subject at hand today. And I would just like to make a very interesting observation. You see, while being posted in East Asia, in Hong Kong in particular, I had this opportunity to see the region at close hands. And today, as we all know, we are confronted with a high amount of trade imbalance with our northern Himalayan neighbor, to the extent of $25 to $30 billion. We import goods worth $50 to $60 billion annually, whereas our exports are are only worth about 20-25 US billion dollars. And what is more worrisome is that our exports, and I'm sure we have captains of Indian industry listening to this session, our exports are mostly in the form of primitive, primary processed exports, like iron ore, coal, raw materials, rather than high-end finished products. And I will give a beautiful case study of enforcement, which is actually an ongoing investigation later on. So why is it that we gave so much of influence over last 2,200 years through, it happened because of the trade routes along the Silk routes. We exported so much. We accounted for 20 to 25% of world GDP. And this was not for 1 year or 10 years or 100 years, but this was over a period of close to 2,000 years, right? If I may say, right up to about 18th century when the Britishers came, we contributed on a consistently at that level. And imagine the level at which we are today. We are contributing barely 2 to 3% of the world GDP, right? In fact, because of our preeminent position on account of our manufacturing and trading and economic ability, that is what drew every country in the world and so-called West to come to India and exploit the trade arbitrages, I would say even smuggle goods from India in active connivance and collaboration with, I would say, seditious elements, like those of us in the East, and everybody's read the stories of Jagat Seth and how they connived with the East India Company to dethrone the Nawab, and, the Britishers took root in Bengal and thereafter the whole country. Now, interestingly, for those who may have visited areas like Murshidabad and in Bengal, where the Nawab used to be housed, there have been tunnels of smuggling which have been found in Jagat Seth's residence, which would go right up to the Hooghly. And it is alleged that he would engage in smuggling of precious stones, diamonds. And I'm going to give you a beautiful case study of 2,000 crores of smuggling, which we have detected in a similar product just about a year back. So we need to get the glory of the country back, and that cannot happen unless and until the Make in India, Stand Up India, and Startup India shines through. And for that to happen, we really need to ensure that the crony capitalism in the country comes to an end, and that will happen when our industrial captains and traders make money not by smuggling, not by shortcuts, but by sheer strength of the product, cost competitiveness, and quality of the product. It has been estimated, in 200 years of colonial rule, as Honorable Vice President mentioned, that close to $46 trillion of wealth has been taken away from our country over a period of 200 years. So this challenge of regaining the position of India is heavily resting on the shoulders, if I may say, of Indian industry, and obviously the policy makers, the enforcement machinery, and most significantly, each and every stakeholder, every citizen of the country. I mean, if we don't buy, when we go to the market, there are markets in Karol Bagh, in Delhi, in every place where smuggled goods are openly being sold. Every consumer knows that these are smuggled goods, right? But yet people get lured by for that easy money, and therefore that economy thrives. So as Dr. Ahmed Patnai, Honorable MP, rightly mentioned, each and every citizen, stakeholder, and not just the members of parliament, the legislator, or the enforcement machinery in government, but even the trade, the rightful trade has to raise alarms and red flags on the wrongful trade. Where would the intelligence in the government come from? Can use all amount of technology, and as let me give you a quote, a very interesting one. The Chinese were very afraid of Mongolians and Genghis Khans and all the attack, right, coming from the north. So they built the famous 6,000 kilometer long huge wall of China, right? But Genghis Khan had only one liner to that. You see, the wall may be very big and strong, but it can't be stronger than the people who are guarding it, right? So, and the rest is history. You had 200 years of colonial rule even in China. Then you had the Yuan dynasty set up by Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. So coming back in this case, who are the sentials? Who are the guards of the economy? It is not the government alone. It's not the legislator alone. It's not the industry alone. It's each and every one of us. And we need to really have this sink into our ethos and our national, social, economic fabric for us to act in unison and achieve the dream of regaining the glory of India. Now, coming to the enforcement scenario, if I may please share with this distinguished audience. You see, in East India, which I was heading the DRI for last 3.5 years, To just give you an idea, in about 1 year alone, we have done, the challenges are multi-pronged. As Dr. Patnaik mentioned, it's not just smuggling of, there's outright smuggling of commodities like gold, which is right now a very favored commodity of smugglers. You have drugs, you have wildlife, you have counterfeit goods, you have fake Indian currency. Then you have on the commercial side, you've got undervaluation, of goods coming in from China and other places. You've got fraudulent exports where the exporters want to avail undue export incentives from the government of India by overinflating the values of the goods, by exporting inferior goods camouflaged as superior goods and thereby claiming higher incentives. So, and of course, you have the trade-based money laundering. And as I think Mr. Anil Rajput mentioned, you see, the global financial integrity, GFI, has estimated that, and as Dr. Patnaik said, very difficult to actually quantify. Anything between 2 to 5% of the global GDP, which is to the tune of, I believe, 60 to 80 trillion US dollars, is the amount of money laundering and smuggling related money. And that will come to anything between 2 to 5 US trillion dollars. So that's a humongous sum that we are looking at. So enforcement of all these acts is the responsibility, which is there under Customs Act on the officers. Now, we would have seized in about 200 cases gold worth 480 crores. And if I may say, in last 3 years, roughly more than 1100 kgs of gold, which is today valued at 400-500 crores, has been seized alone. In commercial frauds, about in 46 cases, 2,000 crores of fraudulent import exports have been detected in just 1 year, out of which rupees close to 800 crores has been got deposited by the DRI. And annually the arrests, and I'm very glad that the Honorable Member of Parliament mentioned the importance of punishment and deterrence. You see, it is so important to set the right example by singling out the bad example, the black sheep. So we have done 200 arrests in a year on the white collar crimes. And so you will be happy to know, under Customs Act, DRI has been at the forefront of enforcing the provisions of prosecution and for criminal violation. So we have done close to 600 arrests in last 3 years in the eastern region, which accounts for roughly 1/3 of all the arrests done by DRI pan India. Now, I would like to mention some typical big scams, for the sake of understanding how the crime world works. So a very important scam, as I mentioned, these days with coming of GST is IGST refunds. Now, there's a very important lesson for stakeholders who are there in supply chain here, that a lot of fake companies come up, who were just born yesterday, who will remain who will have a GST code and who will issue invoices which are actually fake, and there's no movement of goods, and there's a whole domestic supply chain culminating eventually in export. And when the export happens, then they claim the refund. And we have come across such bogus exports or inferior goods being exported with these no goods actually being supplied on the domestic side. Now, these kind of frauds have led to arrest of a lot of people, and typically we find that commodities where the cess on exports is very high, like sin goods like tobacco, there goes up to 180 to 200% of the value, which is claimed as refund. So this scam would not proliferate if the such fly-by-night operators are even blacklisted. I would say even there is a intelligence from trade also, and there is a consensuous behavior, apart from, of course, government trying to do whatever best it can. The other major challenge which confronts us is abuse of free trade agreements. Now, in the Eastern context, or even in fact the pan-India context, we have South Asia Free Trade Agreement, and we have in our enforcement experience come across imports of edible oils which have actually originated in Malaysia and Indonesia, but have been shown to have been processed. There's a minimum processing required to be done in South Asian countries like Bangladesh, for example, for the products to earn the benefit of duty-free imports into India. So they show a value addition which is actually not there. The goods come from Malaysia, Indonesia, and some lip service or some packing is done, but documents are generated to show a higher value addition. So we have come across duty evasion to the tune of 260 crores on imports of these products. And another product is canola oil, which originates actually in Canada and was shown to be originating in Bangladesh. A similar fraud involving duty evasion of 50 crores. Likewise, even in garments, we find that goods are coming from our South Asian neighbors, whereas a lot of materials have actually come from third country, the fabric and the raw material which led to the garment manufacturing. And again, they have inflated the value addition. So this has in fact led to a major policy change, and the government by enacting rules which are called as and legislation act also has been amended to strengthen the checks and balances on the certificates of origin which are presented by the importers. So these rules are called as Karotar, and these are basically customs administration of rules of origin under trade agreements. So now the liability is clearly there on importer. The importer cannot say, I don't know how I got the certificate of origin, because they would get fraudulent certificates of origin. So it's as much the onus of importer to ensure that he's complying with the rules. So these have just been brought into and enacted in this financial year. The other major fraud which we have, which I like to mention, is regarding end-use notifications abuse. So we find, for example, that imports of raw materials which are encouraged by the government, like in this case, e-rickshaws. Now, e-vehicles is a thrust area for the government of India. And parts of e-rickshaws, if they're imported, the duty benefit is high. There is duty exemption. So there is a very low duty. So they would show parts of e-rickshaws, but in reality, finished e-rickshaws were coming in CKD condition, and they were merely being assembled. Now, this the amount of duty evasion ran into several tens of crores. And this is again a classic case of abuse of Make in India, of twisting making false declarations to lead to the well-known phenomena of crony capitalism. This again led to several arrests, and there are many such examples. Another very big challenge is special economic zones. Now, these zones have been set up to promote exports from India, but we have come across in our experience where companies have been abusing the export of gold and jewelry by showing exports to the tune of 6,000-7,000 crores. But in reality, the remittances have not come, or the goods were very inferior. And the gold that has been imported, which was supposed to have gone into processing of the jewelry, has actually been diverted into domestic market. We have not only done arrests, we have also enacted and implemented Coffee Posa, which is a preventive detention, the full form being Conservation of Foreign Exchange and Prevention of Smuggling Activities Act. So it is a very interesting kind of fraud which we have noticed in Eastern region is involving the abuse of Indo-Nepal Transit and Trade Treaty. Now, as per the friendly agreement between India and Nepal, the transit of goods is allowed, but we found a criminal syndicate which was filing documents for customs transit declaration at Calcutta port. But these documents were forged and manipulated. And in reality, the goods would be taken out from Calcutta and would simply be sold in the domestic market. The signatures were all getting forged. Now, that is where the use of technology has come in. And we, after DRI detected this fraud, which in fact resulted in seizure of close to 30 crores worth of goods. And many of these were counterfeit cosmetics, coming from Dubai and China. This led to a major technological policy change, and the entire, though 99% of the country right now is electronic and we have EDI, but on this little leg of transit trade, which doesn't really involve India directly, but it's basically between a third country supplier and a Nepalese importer. Now, at DRI's insistence, the government, the policy wing has implemented automation here, and thereby we have averted significant frauds recurring in future of this kind. So coming in this backdrop, now coming to your very important theme of communication, coordination, collaboration, it is extremely imperative. In fact, World Customs Organization every year chooses a theme for all its 182 member administrations. And in one particular year, I mean, FICCI would be glad to know that it chose exactly the theme of communication. Now, communicating the right intelligence, right, by the informer to the government authority at the right time, or the private sector captains raising red flag on somebody abusing a free trade agreement, for example, or somebody misusing end-use notification incorrectly to the government at the right time, or government agencies from one agency to another exchanging information. You mentioned about data sharing, so very important, right? Within the country, between different enforcement agencies and across the borders, as Dr. Patnaik also mentioned, is so right communication at the right time with the right people is very, very relevant between government to business, government to citizens, and vice versa. Then coming to coordination and collaboration, again, this is an extremely important theme. I strongly believe in the philosophy of coordinated border management, and this august house would be glad to know that we have done several operations with various other law enforcement agencies and border guarding agencies such as BSF, CRPF, CISF, the state police administrations, and other organizations, which has led to thwarting of various such smuggling attempts. And I will give one or two very interesting examples. Just before the COVID lockdown began, national lockdown in March, 2 days prior to that, we, DRI in East India, entered into a 36-hour long operation, right, which with the help of 150 personnel from Border Security Force. And there were 15 people from DRI. And this was happening at a near Petroport border. There's a riverine border called Ichamati River. And the syndicate criminal members would carry gold in small pieces on canoes, and then it would come to no man's land. It would literally be hidden under the ground, like the wild Californian rush of gold in the yesteryears. And then it would be thrown across the fence by a whole team of supply chain of criminals who were involved in this activity, also using the fishermen and the poor villagers for pure economic purposes. And notice here again the lure of easy money, resulting in all these accomplices joining the hardened criminals at the top management of these smuggling companies. So the gold would be thrown across the no man's across the fence, which was being guarded by BSF in small packets. It would be collected on the other end by again a whole network of carriers who would then give it to another set of people who would bring it to Calcutta, and from there it would go all over to the country. So in this operation, we recovered 21 kgs of gold from 4 different places under the ground, spread over this much of time. Likewise, in the Northeast, we have done several operations, and an operation with Tripura Police, which spread over a period of 4 or 5 months. 4 cases were done in which, say, 7,000 kgs of ganja was 7 tons of ganja was seized. So there is a tremendous scope for coordinated border management. And I would also like to share with this august house that India has been at the forefront, DRI and Indian Customs in particular, of international collaboration and joint operations as well. India spearheaded and chaired and coordinated the first ever global enforcement operation on combating smuggling of timber, which are listed under the treaty called CITES, or Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna. And this operation is called Sesha because it is named after Seshachalam Hills, where a very high value species of wood called the red sanders is found, popularly called as redwood. In China, it's called as the emperor's wood. And you'll be shocked to know that the retail rate of this redwood goes as high as 30,000, 40,000 rupees a kg, which is like the rate of silver. And it has a very high demand in China. So while this was our motivation, but there are thousands of species which are listed in CITES. 66 countries participated in this operation globally. This ran between November to December 2019. And more than 700 metric tons of different types of more than 12 to 15 types of different species of timber were seized. And so we firmly believe that it is imperative that not just within the country, not just between the government, but all stakeholders nationally and internationally should join hands to combat this menace. On the technological front, I would also like to mention the department has undertaken a lot of reforms, and recently we have enacted faceless assessment, to bring in technology to the advantage of uniformity, but that's more on the trade facilitation side. So I'm going to stop here for a while, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and we can take questions later on in the interactive session. Thank you, Swati.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a very comprehensive address highlighting the need for all the stakeholders to be in sync to combat this menace. Thank you for sharing the data as well. We have taken your inputs as well while preparing. We shall be preparing a recommendation report, which we will be sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, an integral part of the cascade has been to conduct multi-stakeholder dialogues focused on identifying opportunities for joint action between government enforcement agencies, industry, and consumer organizations to combat the menace of counterfeiting and smuggling. We have an eminent panel to deliberate on industry issues in tackling the flow of such goods, both in the offline and the online market space, and the collaborative role the stakeholders can play in thwarting this menace. With that, may I call upon Mr. Noor Patel, Director, Category Management, Amazon India, to share his views. Mr. Patel is responsible for Amazon's consumer electronics, personal computing, and Amazon Home Services in India. He joined Amazon in late 2014. And prior to this role, he was the General Manager Marketing with the food business at ITC Limited. He holds a postgraduate diploma in business management from XLRI Jamshedpur and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the College of Engineering, Pune. Mr. Patel, if you could kindly make your address, please.
First of all, good afternoon to all of you. And I would take this opportunity to thank FICCI Cascade for inviting me to be a part of this esteemed panel. And I would also take a moment and thank all the panelists for all their efforts over the past few years in working tirelessly in the customer trust space to highlight and generate awareness on counterfeiting and smuggling, and also to mitigate the issue. It was really inspiring to hear the passionate words of Mr. Dipankan Arun. It showed what a person at the front line has done in this area. At the same time, it was really humbling to be in the same presence as Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Ahmed Patnai, and hear him speak. At Amazon, it is our mission, and we strive to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And we treat customer obsession as one of our core principles, which makes us one of the most unique companies in the sense that we are obsessed with listening to our customers, exceeding their expectations, and aligning our business interests with that of theirs. Our ultimate goal is to ensure that when customers shop on Amazon, they have the safest and the most seamless experience while shopping. And they are choosing from the widest collection of the authentic and safe products. Our journey to provide tremendous choice, convenience, and value to customers, we also provide unprecedented opportunities for businesses, both small and medium businesses. However, with millions of customers and selling partners and billions of daily product listings, we unfortunately also have become a target for criminals, bad actors who attempt to dupe customers on the online marketplace. So how do we give our customers the Amazon assurance that each product that they choose and purchase is authentic and safe? We believe that this rests on three tenets, three pillars. The first one, knowledge; second, safety; and the third, accountability. We ensure that customers have accurate and complete information about products and services, which helps buyers make an informed decision about their purchases. It is absolutely our topmost commitment to keep customers safe. We invest heavily to ensure products in Amazon's store are safe. We work closely with relevant government agencies when made aware of products that may be unsafe. And finally, in accountability, we ensure that none of the players that participate on the marketplace adopt any unfair method or deceptive practices that would compromise users or sellers' rights and influence their decisions. However, whenever such activities are witnessed, the platform or the marketplace provides a comprehensive grievance redressal mechanism in case of violation of rights for all sellers, brands, and customers. I would like to spend a couple of minutes to discuss Amazon's experience and efforts in mitigating the instances of fraud and abuse on the marketplace that hamper customer trust. Amazon, through its various initiatives, puts its enormous resources to deliver on the three tenets and to make its marketplace a reliable and safe platform for customers, brands, and sellers alike to conduct transactions in a safe and environment. There are some processes that I would want to kind of share with this august panel that we have put into place to prevent instances of fraud and abuse on the marketplace. The first one is we've invested in automated systems to detect fraud, instances of fraud, abuse. We invest heavily in machine learning and systems to proactively detect and remove suspected listings. We employ dedicated teams of software engineers, applied scientists, program managers, and investigators to operate and continually refine our anti-counterfeiting programs. Our systems automatically and continuously scan numerous data points related to our selling partners, the products, and the brands and offers to detect activity that may indicate a potentially counterfeit product and immediately block or remove it from our marketplace. 99.9% of all products viewed by customers on Amazon globally did not have a valid counterfeit complaint. In 2019 alone, we invested over $500 million globally and have more than 8,000 employees worldwide protecting our marketplace from fraud and abuse. The second investment that we make is we empower brands and customers to protect their rights. We work closely with brands and we empower brands and sellers through our programs. Some of them are brand registry, transparency, and the most recent one, Project Zero, to ensure that only authentic products are sold on the marketplace. We investigate any claim of counterfeit thoroughly, including removing that item from the marketplace, permanently removing the bad actor, and in some cases, pursuing legal action as appropriate. We have robust mechanisms in place for enabling rights owners to file notices of infringement. Once a notice of infringement is received, we have a dedicated team of investigators that evaluates the claim and takes appropriate action. Amazon has employees around the world who are able to investigate reports of counterfeit. If a notice is determined to be valid, Amazon's actions may include removing the product for sale or other similar actions that address the specific infringement, terminating the seller's account or related accounts for the same seller, withholding funds, destroying inauthentic inventory, pursuing civil litigation, and working with law enforcement to support criminal prosecution. If a bad actor is able to evade Amazon's detection mechanisms and sell counterfeit products, Amazon makes it easy for customers to report those concerns, and we ensure that customers who purchase a counterfeit product are able to receive a complete refund. Broadly, our strategy to curb the circulation of counterfeit product rests on 4 rules. 1, we prevent it. 2nd, we remove it. 3rd, we reduce it. And finally, we inform. These are the 4 rules that we follow as we stop the sale of counterfeit. Finally, we are attentive, as always, to our customers' concern. This is the most important step or pillar in our process. In addition to proactively investing in technology and industry-leading brand protection tools, we are very attentive to our customers' concerns. We continuously scan feedback from customers, such as customer reviews, customer contacts to Amazon's customer service team for any signs of safety or authenticity issues, and take action on any suspected product. We use this information to improve the proactive controls that we invest in. We operate as a marketplace in India, complying with the local FDI laws, but that does not exercise local FDI laws, and we do not exercise any control over the seller's inventory. However, regardless of that, we do take proactive measures such as what I have just listed to curb the sale of counterfeits. Coming to this forum, we actually look forward to working with all people who are on this August panel and other stakeholders on resolving this issue that affects our commerce so deeply. Counterfeiting and smuggling negatively impacts legitimate economic activity and facilitates an underground economy and organized crime that deprives governments of revenues for vital public services, forcing higher burden on taxpayers, dislocating hundreds of thousands of legitimate jobs, and exposes consumers to dangerous and ineffective products. It is the world's largest growing industry, and its size estimated to be anywhere between $650 million to $3 trillion. Only through meaningful communication, coordination, and collaboration, which is the theme of this webinar, amongst all actors across the supply chain, will we all be able to set up a systematic practice to eliminate this issue. Public discourses such as this are a key step and the step in the right direction, as these will help in identifying opportunities for joint actions between various bodies, including governments, enforcement agencies, industry, and consumer organizations. Amazon is extremely willing to support in every step of the way as we move ahead in preventing this menace. With that, I would thank once again this panel for our providing me with an opportunity to speak at this August panel. And as we move ahead, Amazon continues to be committed to cooperate with FICCI and work closely with all the stakeholders in this charter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Our next speaker is Mr. Milind Palani. Mr. Palani is a part of the Johnson & Johnson's Global Brand Protection team and is the Global Brand Protection Lead for India and South Asian region. He's an experienced professional in investigations involving supply chain leakage, counterfeiting, anti-money laundering, and financial fraud. May I request Mr. Milind Palani to please share his views on the theme.
Thank you, Swati. A very good afternoon, firstly, to all the respected dignitaries and my co-panelists out here for inviting, and I would say to FICCI Cascade for inviting Johnson & Johnson and giving us the opportunity to be a part of this esteemed webinar. I'll just say by starting that Johnson & Johnson is a broad-based healthcare company, and patient safety is the topmost priority of our organization. For the same reason, I would say we have a credo document in place where we say our first para, which say specific focus on patient safety. So when it comes to patient safety, we have a dedicated global brand protection team across the globe and across the enterprise. So many people don't know, or people presume Johnson & Johnson is a consumer goods or a baby product company, but we are a broad-based healthcare company having diversification into medical devices, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, vision care, and even consumer products. So we have I would say, a dedicated global brand protection enterprise team who looks after all the 4 functions across the globe. So coming on to today's theme, I'll be breaking up into 3 parts, just to rightly say about the communication, collaboration, and the coordination part with the customs and the broader group. As I mentioned, we have a dedicated brand protection program in place, which is a holistic program, but I'll be sticking to the custom specific points today. Coming to the first part, I would say there are some specific laws and regulations in place. So we have a dedicated customs program, which is an enterprise program across the globe. So even in India, there are defined laws and there are customs acts in place. So as an organization, the first step is you need to register all your trademarks. So that as a responsible organization, you have to register all the trademarks, get it registered in the ICE-Gate, get the UPRN and the UTRN number first. So if you don't do that step, maybe you are not in the right inflection or the starting point. So the registration of the trademark is a very first important step to be coordinating and collaborating with the customs. So most of your key trademarks have to be registered first, and then the process starts itself. So as an organization, I would say from a communication standpoint, we do a lot of capacity building program with FICCI with regards to police and various law enforcement agencies. Coming specifically to customs, we organize customs trainings, which are specifically for IP and product identification. I'll just take a minute where what we see is the people who are actually working on the ground and the custom officers, the person who are working on either ICDs, dry ports or sea ports. The post at which these officers come, the rotation happens at 8 to 9 months. So the moment he comes in, he has only 1 or 2 months to get himself acquainted, and within 9 months, the transfer happens. So a training of this particular, I would say, scale, where we do around 1 or 2 trainings every month, around 20-25 training, is a constant evolving process. So every month we have to go and train these officers, sensitize them, and impart them about their IP rights and laws and what actual power they have. And we actually show them the counterfeit products to distinguish them, because many a times, because of the kind of the inflow they have to tackle on a day-to-day basis, they are not having very clear understanding of what the product is, whether it is an original or a counterfeit. So we sensitize them, we show them the original and the counterfeit product, which gives them a first-hand experience and understanding about how to identify and how, when they are actually doing the ground checking of the containers at the ICDs or at the ports. Sensitizing and training at the NASIN, collaborating with CPAM, with FICCI, plays a very important role for an organization like J&J. There's a government body by the name CPAM which has started imparting trainings as well, and they are advocating as well. So as a responsible company, we are working with CPAM as well to sensitize and to give them the right kind of the voice which has to be made with the people at the top and the people at the bottom as well who are actually checking the containers. I would say coming to the second part is, I would say, collaboration or coordination. It coincides when you actually go and do the training. What I said, the person gets transferred in 9 months. So once that guy goes to the other port, he will become a brand ambassador. So this is a continuous evolving process where you have to train these officers who are actually checking on the ground. So when the moment they go, there are some guys who are actually who I would say are actually capable of identifying and pulling out the right consignments from the ports. Because it becomes very difficult when, take an example of the JNPT Mumbai port, there are around 16 to 20,000 containers who land daily. So to check and to scan and the kind of load we have because of the green channel clearance, it becomes very difficult for officers to understand and the time frame and to check, because most of these goods are misdeclared, underdeclared, or are bought with a wrong heading. So these trainings actually help them in part to understand what their rights are, what their processes are. Uh, Coming to the specific part when it comes to, I would say, coordination or collaboration, what we have seen is there are specific laws in place where the processes are well defined. What we have seen is uh, coming to the pro side is many a times custom officers and I would say officials seize the consignments and containers, and many multinational companies don't come forward and participate as a right holders, which acts like a demotivating factor for the custom officials. As a Johnson & Johnson, we have a 100% compliance policy. So many a times where we have seen many right holders don't participate because they see only 5 to 10 products being seized. And there is a stringent policy of submitting bank guarantees and bonds within 72 hours. So those processes which are defined sometimes becomes difficult for many organizations, and they feel it is only 2 piece, 3 piece, or 5 piece. So after the efforts which are being put in by customs, many people or many organizations don't want to participate, which is demotivating the custom officials, and they don't feel encouraged by such kind of negative vibes coming from the industry or from the right holders. So as an organization, we even participate if it is a 1 piece because we have a zero tolerance policy. We go and train them, we sensitize them. Coming specific to, I would say, coordination part, there is an opportunity, I would say, where some processes can be improved, like there's a RMSN or a ICE gate. I'll give a simple example. Johnson & Johnson imports products for enterprise at only 3 or 4 ports. So whenever we go and train the custom officers or we meet the commissioner at that particular ICD or port, we specifically tell them that at this port, no Johnson & Johnson product by this entity is supposed to come. Only these are the 4 ports or ICDs where we are supposed to be registering and importing our product and clearing it. At any other ports, like where we don't have any presence or we don't import or we don't register, it is a straightforward, I would say, a red flag which needs to be identified for the officers who are working on the ground. It can be a parallel import, it can be a counterfeit, or it can be a misdeclared or an under declaration. In all the 3 aspects, it is causing loss to the revenue, to the exchanger, and to the, I would say, the economy. So these are some specific inputs where people can, right holders can give the suggestions in the RMS system. ICE get some specific database sharing can be done, like there are some paid databases where companies have access, like Walza and Penjiva, or there's a trade compliance team who has a look at the databases as well. So that data sharing to the custom officers, when we go and train, it definitely helps them to understand what are the patterns and what are the trends. And there are some specific countries which, or some specific ports across the borders where we are known to see counterfeit coming in. Like there are some ports which are specifically, I would say, red flag ports in China or in, I would say, Middle East or in Africa, from where specific counterfeit products do land in India. So we make an honest attempt to sensitize those specific ports and make them to tell, please double check the consignments which are specifically coming from these particular ports. Also, there are few areas of, I would say, improvement with the customs as well, with regards to bank guarantees and bonds and with regards to destructions of goods. These particular processes are a little bit tough, where the destruction of the process itself takes 2 to 3 years. There's an opportunity where all the right holders and the industry can collaborate and bring down the destruction turnaround time. And even there is always a, I would say, the valuation and the calculation of the bond guarantees and BG, which plays a very crucial part when it comes to participation. There is always a, I would say, a disconnect or little bit of a grievance as to how the value has been arrived. So those are the areas of opportunities where I would say all the right holders can work with customs. We can smoothen and we can improve the process. That is it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you for your statement. May I now request Mr. Bijon Mishra for his address, please. Mr. Mishra is a very well-known public figure and actually needs no introduction. And he is an international consumer policy expert. Mr. Mishra has over 45 years of professional experience, out of which he has spent 35 plus years in consumer education and advocacy in India and globally. He is an international expert on user focus for developing strategies and capacity building programs in developing countries on quality management systems for public and private entities to build customer-centric culture within the organization. Thank you for joining us, sir, today. And with that, may I request you to please share your keen insights on the subject.
Thank you very much, Swati, for giving me this opportunity. And I wish to also thank Kasifa for coordinating this event. And of course, the chair of the FICCI Cascade, Rajput. Anilji is synonymous with the fight against counterfeit in the country. He has engaged with FICCI in such an active manner that today FICCI Cascade is world known and globally known in terms of its activity. We have prominent advisors like Deep Chand and Mr. P.C. Jha, who has been constantly facilitating us. And I'm very happy that today we got in a lawmaker, Dr. Ahmed Patnai ji, who is a member of the Rajya Sabha, and he gave an excellent keynote address. And I must felicitate him for giving a real insight into how we should be moving forward. And of course, Dipankar ji, you were just fabulous. You brought in the global dimensions, you brought in your experience in terms of how we should be able to be seen globally working towards tackling the menace of counterfeiting. And it was an excellent kind of an insight you all shared with us. And Noor, your presentation was music in the ears, man. It was really music in the ears. I wish the consumers in the country know about this, what you do. And that is where I think the theme of today is very relevant. Communication. You see, I strongly feel that we all are doing a lot of great work in terms of, at the end of the day, to protect that consumer who pays out of his pocket or he is using taxpayers' money. But as a consumer, the consumer always looks for a simple language which could be understood in terms of how to differentiate between a genuine product and a counterfeited product. And the biggest challenge today in our country is that with all the laws in our country, we have a very poor surveillance system. You see, the industry does a lot of work. I do know that you spend a lot of resource in engaging with experts to tackle this counterfeit menace. But unfortunately, the consumer organizations or the end consumers are not being engaged in the manner they deserve to be engaged. You see, we have a very poor refund policy or an exchange policy in our country. What is the major differentiation of counterfeit? The major differentiation is when I buy a product as a consumer and I feel that I have got cheated and it's a substitute product, the company should be more than willing to conduct an exchange right away and take away that substandard product and examine what has been the origin of that product and how did that product reach the consumer. And that information must be shared in public domain so the consumers can develop a kind of a trust in that brand, which is extremely important and which is unfortunately missing in our country. You see, how many of us know, and I'm sure Milan will agree with me, of course he would know, that we have a very strong pharmacovigilance program of India. Now, how many consumers, how many retailers in our country who deal with pharmacy products knows about the existence of the pharmacovigilance program of India? How many people know about the material vigilance program of India, where we talk about substandard or medical devices which tantamounted to adverse drug reaction? How many people report adverse drug reaction in our country? You will be very amazed to know that the figures are minuscule. It's not even 1%. So the whole point is, if we have to tackle counterfeit, then the consumer at the receiving end has to get actively engaged. We receive on an average every day about 100 complaints where consumers are only pleading that I have got a substandard product I don't want to buy this product. I want an exchange. And they run from pillar to post to get an exchange of a product which could be counterfeited and which could actually lead to a huge amount of exposure in getting the culprits and getting to the culprits to catch them. I do know that a lot of police activities go on, a lot of government activities are there, as Dipankar explained to us. But at the end of the day, the consumer is not able to reach out in terms of being able to participate in this whole movement of tackling counterfeit. You see, I would tell you that whenever I did a study on the surveillance systems of our country, whether it is substandard food, whether it is drugs, whether it is any kind of a product which a consumer is buying, whenever the police catches the culprit, the company goes away stating that this product doesn't belong to them. And the court are unable to convict the culprits because of lack of evidences. The challenge is now, how do we use technology? And we all know that today the technology is the biggest enabler. We have GS1 standard globally. Government of India, Ministry of Commerce has invited GS1 to set up a great, vibrant office in India. They are setting the standards. We are all knowing what is 2D barcoding. We all know how we are having tools and techniques to empower that consumer to be able to differentiate between a genuine product and a counterfeit product. We all know that under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, there is a full kind of a mechanism available where the drug controller is regularly picking up samples from the marketplace. We were engaged in conducting one of the world's largest study ever done. 47,000 samples of drugs were collected from various points, statistically significant, conducted in a very scientific manner. And we came to conclusions that India is not the hub of spurious medicines or substandard medicines in the world. But the whole world was lobbying to undermine the quality of good drugs manufactured in India, saying that India is the hub of spurious and substandard medicines, which were not true. And we shut the world to keep quiet out of these studies which we conducted. And they could not challenge our study because it was one of the best conducted study ever done by any country, which India did. What was the secret? The secret was collaboration. All stakeholders came together, along with the drug inspectors. The consumer groups got involved in the country and collected these samples in a manner that it is scientifically tenable. Similarly, such studies should be conducted in various fields in our country, where it is most vulnerable, where the smuggling is very high. And I know that I have had several rounds of conversation with Mr. Rajput, that is the only way we can tackle this, that engage the citizens, develop studies, which needs to be done in a regular manner, whether it is substandard medical devices, whether it is tobacco, whether it is any kind of product which are being smuggled the most in our country. Get studies done which will create evidences in terms of the culprits and catching the culprits. We have very eminent police officials like Mr. Deepchand who are with us. We all know what are the mechanisms, but we have to be very candid in the sense that we have to expose the truth. We cannot hide behind the truth. And the truth is that we are not engaging enough with the citizens, with the consumers. We are not engaging with them to encourage them to come back with feedbacks mechanism. We have to encourage them more. We have to make these surveillance mechanisms which are existing in our country very robust, functional, in the interest of the citizens. You see, what I want to conclude is that today in our country, we have more than 760 million users of smartphones. So you can imagine the reach how a consumer can get empowered. If you can have a good, robust tracing and tracking mechanism where you can empower the consumer to differentiate and where we can educate them in terms of being able to set the alarm, then we can do it. Like I will give an example. In Gujarat, they started a mechanism where any product in terms of drugs, the Food and Drug Administration Authority of Gujarat, they set up a fantastic example where what they did, that when they picked up a sample and they found it to be substandard, they immediately sent SMSs to all the retail shops with the batch number of the product, so that they could take it out from the supply chain and have a recall, a real robust recall. And Gujarat government showed it that the whole consignments which were found to be substandard were able to be removed from the supply chain. The only way we can do it is to ensure that we are able to link quality and empower the citizens with that quality to ensure that they are able to give a feedback immediately and they're made alert. You see, what I would like to stress here, and FICCI Cascade, as they have been doing a great job, I would like to stress saying that you must get the consumer organizations also trained by competent people to be able to be your watchdogs on the ground and be able to give a good feedback and use these kind of mechanisms which are there, which are already built by the government out of the taxpayers' money. Why don't we use it in the purpose it needs to be used? See, I always been observing that all the industry people must come together, that it should be a kind of a joint effort. And FICCI Cascade is an excellent platform, let me tell you, where organizations like Amazon has also come in, as I can see, Johnson & Johnson has come in. All the big brands should come in together and make it a joint movement. Make it a movement which becomes empowering in the sense that we all know that if I have any kind of a suspicion, I should be able to exchange it and I should be able to get the right product. All the companies must encourage that there should be an excellent refund and exchange policies at every retail level. All retailers who sells your product, you have to kind of give them that empowerment also, that they should be able to immediately report the moment they find that something is substandard or your supply chain has been punctured by the counterfeiters. That kind of a mechanism. Like, why do consumers always go for a brand? Because they have trust and faith in that brand. And that brand must ensure that you have to take onus. You cannot, and that is what I want to tell Amazon and all the platform owners who are aggregators, that you have to take onus. And I heard today Noor very beautifully explaining that you take the onus and you do it, which is a great thing. And we congratulate you for doing that. Now build that kind of a culture, build that trust and bring it in such a way that that communication, coordination and collaboration are not only words, but are actionable points seen by the consumer who actually pays for that product and who deserves to be looked into in terms of getting that value for money. So with this, I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity. Let us work together in strengthening the surveillance system in our country, in strengthening a good kind of a tracking and tracing system, and be able to get comfortable exchange of products which are actually counterfeited and taken out of the supply chain at the earliest possible time. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for a very powerful and thought-provoking address. We look forward to your guidance and support in working with consumers and working with other stakeholders to address this problem. Thank you once again. We are running behind schedule, and I do not want to hold on to our eminent panelist. In case there are no questions, I don't see any questions as of now. In case there are any questions, you will always write to us at cascade@ficci.com, and we will have it addressed by our panelist. And now with that, may I request Mr. Deep Chand, Advisor FICCI Cascade and former Special Commissioner of Police, New Delhi, to please propose the vote of thanks. Okay, I think sorry to interrupt. I think I have just, Mr. Rajiv Gulati had to ask a question. So we'll just take one question. Mr. Gulati, if you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Mr. Gulati, are you there? Chetan, could you please check whether whether there's a problem with the mute or unmute? He has raised his hand for some time now. No, I think we are unable to connect to Mr. Gulati. Mr. Gulati, we take up your question. I will forward your question to Mr. Noor Patel and have it addressed. With that, may I request Mr. Deep Chand to please make his vote of thanks.
Thank you, Swati. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join some of the thought leaders here today as we strengthen our fight against counterfeiting and smuggling through effective communication, coordination, and collaboration. Since years, the world has been battling the illicit trade and its adverse socio-economic impacts. During the last 20 years, the volume of the counterfeiting activity has increased by 100 times. According to UN organization, the profits that transnational organized crime derived from such shadow industries have been estimated to be as high as $870 billion, equivalent to 1.5% of global GDP. As one of the speakers said, that it may be more than 2 to 3% of the global GDP. Unfortunately, the problem has only compounded in the current situation, where criminals have used the COVID pandemic as an opportunity to exploit the vulnerable consumers and organizations, causing significant damage. The coronavirus epidemic has presented fresh challenges for the Indian economy, causing severe disruptive impact on both demand and supply sides. Given the spike in consumer demand and the corresponding shortage of supplies from legitimate sources, it is imperative that business take proper steps to protect consumers from the proliferation of scammers and infringers that seek to take advantage of the COVID-19 crisis. As echoed in the session today, illicit trading activities like counterfeiting and smuggling tend to gain momentum in times of such emergencies. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ahmed Patnai, Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, for taking out time from his busy schedule and joining us today. Dr. Patnaik has rightly highlighted the need for policymakers to seriously consider the implication of counterfeiting and smuggling on the Indian economy and consumer health and safety. He has also emphasized the creation of a robust database of people who indulge in smuggling and counterfeiting. And lastly, he emphasized on the certainty of punishment, because these make the criminal dread of the outcome of their illegal activities. Thank you, Mr. Dipankar Aaron, Commissioner GST, for throwing light on the efforts of the enforcement agencies in tackling the flow of illicit products during these unprecedented times. Our enforcement officers play a pivotal role in thwarting criminals who are cashing in during the crisis and the areas of concern in consumer safety. Mr. Aaron also emphasized the need for right communication at right time with right people for effective enforcement. His speech was really music to the ears, as Mr. Bejon Mishra said. Very wonderfully he has made this speech. I must also thank Mr. Anil Rajput, chairman of the committee, for being with us today and for spearheading FICCI Cascades initiatives with an unmitigated force which drives this issue across the nation. I would also thank Mr. Noor Patel, Director Category Management, Amazon India, and Mr. Milind Pandey, Global Brand Protection Lead, India and South Asia, Johnson & Johnson, for sharing thought-provoking perspective on the subject. I will here point out that as Mr. Noor Patel has mentioned that a lot of emphasis is being made in Amazon India to detect the counterfeited products and products which are substandard. I would also request him to take some more interest, interest in getting the criminal cases registered against those people who are supplying the fake goods or substandard goods, because unless the criminal proceedings are started against them, they are not going to stop, and they may come again and again with different names. So he may consider this suggestion. As rightly indicated by them, collaborative effort by the government and industry to educate and sensitize stakeholders to address the menace is now a necessity. Professor Bejan Kumar Mishra, international consumer policy expert, Jago Grahak Jago, raised the right concerns that will be helpful in further deliberations on the subject in days to come. He stressed the need for involvement of consumers and for industry to win their trust in order to deal with substandard products. I'll conclude by saying, in spite of several measures which are being undertaken by the government, steps are required both in the form of policy intervention and awareness generation to combat the problem of illicit trade and the related underground economy. FICCI Cascade is committed to the cause of curbing this menace, and it is encouraging to get the support of all stakeholders. Last but not the least, thank you all for joining us. I hope you had an enriching session today. Thank you. Stay safe and have a good day.
Thank you so much. And thank you all the eminent panelists and the dignitaries who joined us today for this very important session. We look forward to connecting with you again on the issue of combating this menace. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. अब हम ही बज गए शायद Kashifa, anybody else there? No. You're on